All right, it's Donald Kendall again with another Stopping Socialism video, joined as always by Justin Haskins. Justin, we get fan mail from here and there. So I wanted to read off this one that we got kind of recently, and I did send a response. I won't say the guy's name specifically. We'll call him Tim. Okay. And I'll read his email, and I want for us to respond. I thought this would be worthy of making a video about this particular thing. So it says, first, let me thank you guys for producing the best weekly podcast. I never miss it. I did not add that. It is actually in the email. Justin makes a three-part argument against socialism. One, there are no examples of successful socialistic countries. Two, Scandinavian countries are not socialistic. And three, socialism is intrinsically evil.
So hold on, before we get going, is this person disagreeing with me?
No, this person is in total agreement with you.
Okay.
But it basically is having trouble.
I don't know who Tim is, but I like him already.
So I used this three-part argument with a liberal friend. He replied that my first argument is wrong, citing China as extremely successful socialized country. His counter-argument, it started 70 years ago as an impoverished, war-torn country, has raised its citizens from the lowest imaginable poverty to nearly the greatest economy in the world, and is on the cusp of eclipsing the USA. They have managed to corner the market on healthcare and electronic productivity, for example. They have duped American businesses into utter dependence on their manufacturing capabilities. They are seizing the initiative for development in other countries around the world. They have duped most of the media and politicians in America into acting as apologists for their cause. How can we say that China, the epitome of a socialist communist country, is not successful? How do I answer this argument?
That's great. So first of all, I think it's important to point out that like 3 out of his 5 arguments are that they're really good at duping people. which should be
also like diligent note takings on your conversation that you had with your friend there.
Yeah, very diligent. I think that's your first red flag, right? If you're really good at propaganda and misleading people and lying, you're probably not a great country. You know, that's not something you aspire to be. Second of all, are you kidding me? Like, China is your example. So here's the thing. The way to win this argument, there's a lot of ways to win the argument, right? You could provide them with facts and information and talk about all the torture and death and destruction and starvation and all of that. But that's the long way to win the argument. There's a short way to win the argument.
Sure.
And the shortcut to win the argument is this. Anyone who points to China as an exceptional example of socialism has already lost. It's over. Because the Chinese nation, especially over the past 70 years, has probably killed more people than any other country on the face of the planet. And by people, I don't mean in warfare. I mean just innocent civilians.
Right.
Okay, they're the biggest human rights violators of the 20th century. And they're probably the biggest human rights violators today. They've got 1 million people right now locked away in China because they don't agree with their religion, essentially.
Yeah.
They execute people for things that in America you might go to jail for like 6 months. They kill them there.
Yeah.
They are horrible human rights violators. They don't have a free press. They don't have freedom of association. They're essentially a one-party dictatorship in a sense. I mean, it's not a dictatorship per se, but it's essentially a oligarchy of sorts. It by no means whatsoever a successful country by any standard that an American would actually have. Now, are they better off than they were 50 years ago? Yeah, because 50 years ago, they were lining people up and shooting them into ditches and starving people, and they were in constant chaos. Yeah, so yeah, they're better off than they were then. Were they better off than 100 years ago? Yeah, sure. But you know when the turning point for China was? The turning point for China was when they started to adopt even just a tiny little drop of freedom in their markets. That's when things started getting better. Before that, Hundreds of millions of people were starving to death.
Yeah, so that was basically like the first part of my 3-part answer to this fan of ours. I said that basically you could attribute the majority of this raising of the population out of poverty to an adoption of free markets. There was a rash of free market reforms that started in like the early 90s, and they had like certain economic zones, and then they really just started allowing certain levels of private property. And you saw a boom in productivity, and yeah, it's not it's not this benevolent dictator. It was the lack of the benevolent dictator.
That's right.
It was the free markets, voluntary interaction that helped bolster.
Exactly. It was essentially the government had its boot on the throat of the whole country, and it didn't lift the boot off the throat. It just lifted it up just enough so that they could breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
That's all it was. I mean, that's all essentially that it was. And really what it shows is the power of capitalism and the power of free markets, because you can take a country that is authoritarian, that is filled with people, hundreds of millions of people in poverty. You could take a country that is broken, that's been beaten down, that's been indoctrinated, that's full of all sorts of problems we don't even know about because we're not even allowed to go to China and just walk around and see what things are really like throughout most of the country. It is a country that is so broken and so destroyed in many different ways. But even despite that, just a little bit of freedom in that system will lift hundreds of millions of people from poverty. So all you had to do was take a little drop of freedom and dip it into this incredibly poisonous atmosphere. And now all of a sudden you have a much, much better economy.
Right.
And that tells you everything you need to know about how awful they've been. And the truth is they talk about, well, look at their economic success compared to all these other different people. Well, yeah, that's all these different countries. That's true. But in large part, it's been because they've mixed a little bit of their freedom with their totalitarianism. And they've kept people in poverty, and they have not allowed everyone to have access to private property rights. And it's made the rich at the top especially rich and powerful. And it's made the people at the bottom, it's kept them in poverty this entire time. And it has not been good for regular people for the most part. It's a certain class of people in China who are doing very well, and that class is expanding. But there are still hundreds of millions of people. There are more people in China right now living in destitute poverty than there are in the United States.
Yeah. So like, to me, I think that like this liberal friend of his that tries to invoke China as an example of his shining example of a successful socialist country is an admission of the failures of socialism. Like, really? Like, this is your example? Like, this brutal dictatorship that literally has millions of people in concentration camps, censors the media, doesn't allow certain websites to even be in the country itself.
They have a surveillance state.
Surveillance. Oh, gosh. Like, they have one of the worst human rights records. Like, that's your example of a successful country? Like, that's your proof that we could actually do this right, is trying to resemble China?
Yeah. Well, that's the point, right? That's what's so great about it is it's like, if that's the presentation you have to make before the American people, and you say, look, we can either have what we have right now with, all of its flaws. We could try to improve upon that and make it better, which is what I'm all for. I'm not for just saying, well, we just got to live with whatever we got right now. I think things can be better. But we could try to improve things using free markets and freedom. And, it's not going to be perfect. Oh, I get that. There will be problems. There's always problems. Or we could have a massive dictatorial, authoritarian, statist regime that's full of human rights violations and lack of freedom. And you can't even go to the website you want. I mean, No, the vast majority of Americans are not choosing what's behind door number 2. Like, they're just not. They're just never going to choose that. I mean, I don't even think that you could get Americans to agree based purely on the internet thing. if you told them that you could have this country, but you couldn't go to the websites you wanted, you could only go to the ones the government said you had to go to, that might be the deal breaker right there. Most people are like, well, wait a minute. I can't go, I can't watch whatever I want. I can't watch funny cat videos and listen to podcasts that I like. Well, screw that. I'm out.
I mean, this is a country where they have banned Winnie the Pooh because people started joking that their president, right? Their president over there looks like Winnie the Pooh.
Right.
So now Winnie the Pooh is just non-existent. They just ripped that out of culture. It's gone. Yeah. It's gone.
That's too offensive. Too offensive to their their
dear leader.
Yeah, their dear leader. That's seriously that's again, as you said at the beginning of this. I mean, if that's the success story, then it's over. Yeah. Like it's all done. It's done. You won the debate. Right. You don't have to do anything else.
And it's hilarious.
You can't reach a person like that.
No, and it's hilarious because we dedicated so much time and our resources into kind of debunking the idea that these Scandinavian countries are examples of successful socialist countries. And we just assumed that nobody would ever even think to bring up China as an example proving their point. So this is the first video that we've ever done. It's trying to counter the idea that China is a system that we should try to resemble.
It's literally never happened. In all the times that we've done this,
yeah,
it's never happened. Never. I can't stress this enough. The history of China is as bad as the Holocaust.
Oh, it's
okay. Yeah. And in pure numbers, it's worse.
60 million deaths attributable to the Mao regime.
It's worse. It's the worst place on the planet at times throughout the past 100 years. It's been the worst place on the planet to live. So the idea that this is a big success story and that we should just be like China.
And we're not even talking about some of the the one child policy that they had that
and that's recent.
Yeah, right. I don't know. Just
it's a terrible place.
Tim, send your friend this video. How about that?
I don't. It's just so, it's so bad. It's so laughably bad and so ridiculous that anyone who makes this argument has absolutely no credibility whatsoever.
Remember when Bloomberg, this is more recent, but Bloomberg was doing a video with 60 Minutes or something, and he was trying to make the case that China isn't a dictatorship and how they're actually a free country or something. And nobody gave that even they just raked him over the coals. Justifiably so.
Exactly. I mean, it's not even a debate. It's not see, I understand the Scandinavian thing because the Scandinavian thing, there's just a lot of confusion. People have been very confused for a very long time. There's a lot of conservatives that don't really understand what those countries are or what their laws are. I totally get that. It makes perfect sense. But China is an obvious human rights violator. Obvious. They're a disaster. Right. And so the idea that they are in any way remotely successful as a nation in terms of what we would want to be is just laughably ridiculous and absurd. So, but I am grateful for this because truly I have never heard this argument before. I've never even thought of it as a possibility. And you got to be prepared for everything. That's the lesson here. You got to be prepared for everything.
It's it would be like trying to argue that a bullet is a great cure for cancer. Yeah. You just shoot the person, there's no more cancer.
Right.
It's that's what this liberal front is.
Look at the success rate. Look at the success rate. Such a successful strategy for cancer treatment. Nobody cares about their cancer after getting shot in the head. You're right. That's really what it seems like. I mean, it's that bad. It's that bad. It's one of the worst arguments I've ever heard.
Yeah. All right, so that will do it for this episode, Stopping Socialism. If you like these videos, check us out on our various social medias. YouTube, you can find us on Stopping Socialism TV. Facebook, just look up Stopping Socialism. You can also find our Instagram account. Justin, where can people find you?
At Justin Z. Haskins on Facebook and Twitter. Unless you're in China, then you can't find me.
That's a good point. You probably wouldn't be
Banned,
able
probably.
And how about if they have questions for us? This person got through us for our podcast email, which is in the tank podcast@gmail.com. Is there any other emails that they could reach us for questions that we
Yeah,
could answer on
yeah,
segments like this?
yeah. They could email me at jhaskins@heartland.org, and we'll be happy to talk about anything that you could, just send us any crazy email you could possibly come up with.
Yeah, put
I
stopping
encourage it.
socialism in the subject
Yeah,
line, and
yes.
yeah, we'll address it. All right, thank you all for tuning in. We'll talk to you later.